At my son's wedding, his bride told me to leave, shouting, "You are not welcome here. Go away." Within an hour, I had canceled all the wedding payments, and what I had prepared next shocked her. If you have ever felt invisible to the people you sacrificed everything for, this story is for you. My name is Gordon Blackwood. I am 66 years old, and for the last 5 years since my wife passed, I have lived a quiet life. I drive a 7-year-old Ford pickup. I wear work boots more often than dress shoes. To the world, and apparently to my own son, I look like a retired construction worker living on a pension. They do not know about the sale of my contracting firm 4 years ago. They do not know about the municipal bonds or the commercial real estate portfolio. They only see the gray hair and the old truck. And tonight, at the most expensive hotel in Chicago, that blindness is going to cost them everything. The crystal chandeliers of the grand ballroom shimmered overhead, casting a golden light on 300 guests. It was a spectacle. Silk tablecloths imported orchids from Thailand that cost $40 a stem, and a 10-piece orchestra playing soft jazz in the corner. I stood near a pillar in the back holding a glass of sparkling water, trying to make myself as small as possible. I knew my daughter-in-law Brittany did not want me here. She had made that clear during the rehearsal dinner when she asked if I could maybe skip the photos because my suit looked a bit dated. It was the suit I wore to bury my wife. It was clean. It was pressed. It was respectful. But to Brittany Caldwell, a 26-year-old woman who believed the world owed her a red carpet, it was an eyesore. I watched my son Justin across the room. He looked handsome in his tuxedo, laughing with his new father-in-law Stan. Justin is 28. He calls himself an entrepreneur. In reality, he has started 4 businesses in 5 years, all funded by me, and all of them have failed. But tonight, he looked successful. It is easy to look successful when your father has quietly signed a check for $150,000 to pay for your wedding. I took a sip of water and checked my watch. I just wanted to see them cut the cake. I wanted to see my son happy. Then I would slip out the back door and drive home to my dog, Buster. "Excuse me." The voice was sharp, like glass breaking. I turned to see Brittany standing there. She looked stunning in a Vera Wang dress that I knew cost $12,000 because I had seen the invoice on my credit card statement. But her face was twisted in a look of pure disgust. Standing next to her was her mother Linda, a woman who wore so much jewelry she rattled when she walked. "Gordon, what are you doing in the main hall?" Brittany hissed, keeping her voice low so the guests nearby would not hear. I smiled, trying to de-escalate the tension. "Hello, Brittany. You look beautiful. I was just getting some water before I found my seat." "Your seat is in the overflow room past the kitchen," Linda interjected, crossing her arms. "We discussed this. This is the VIP area. The mayor is here. Justin's business partners are here." I looked down at my shoes. They were polished, but they were old leather, comfortable and worn. Then I looked at the pristine white carpet beneath us. "You are ruining the aesthetic," Brittany said, her eyes scanning me up and down with open contempt. "Look at you. That suit is baggy. Those shoes are hideous. Honestly, Gordon, you look like the janitor." "It is embarrassing." I felt a tightening in my chest. Not anger, not yet. It was a deep, hollow sadness. I looked for Justin. He was only 20 feet away holding a glass of champagne. He saw us. He saw his new wife and his mother-in-law cornering his father. He saw the distress on my face. And he turned his back. He pretended to laugh at a joke someone made engaging in conversation with a waiter to avoid eye contact with me. That was the moment. That was the exact second the cord snapped. I looked back at Brittany. She was tapping her foot impatiently. "I asked you a question, Gordon," she snapped. "Why are you here? You are bringing down the property value of my wedding just by standing there. Please just go, leave. You are not welcome in this room." Linda nodded in agreement. It would be best if you just went home, Gordon. We can tell people you were not feeling well. It is better than explaining, well, this. She gestured vaguely at my entire existence. I looked at the woman who had just pledged to love my son. I looked at the mother who had ordered the lobster and the filet mignon on my dime, and I looked at the back of my son's head. Okay, I said softly. Brittany blinked, surprised it was this easy. Okay, yes, you are right. I do not fit in here. I will leave. I placed my glass of water on a passing tray. I did not raise my voice. I did not make a scene. I simply adjusted my cuff, nodded to Linda, and walked toward the double doors. Good riddance, I heard Brittany whisper as I walked away. I walked out of the ballroom, down the grand marble staircase, and into the cool night air of Chicago. The valet saw me coming and ran to get my truck. While I waited, I pulled my phone from my pocket. My hands were steady. My heart was beating slow and rhythmic. It was the calm of a man who knows exactly what he has to do. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name Elena, wedding planner. I hit call. She answered on the second ring. The background noise of the party was audible on her end. Mr. Blackwood, is everything okay? I saw you leaving. Hello, Elena, I said, my voice flat. I need to make a change to the billing for the event. Oh, of course. Did you want to add the late-night snack bar? Brittany was asking about the sliders. No, Elena. I want you to cancel the payment. There was a pause. The line went silent. Excuse me, Mr. Blackwood. I do not think I heard you correctly. You heard me. I am the contract holder for this event. The deposit was paid, but the remaining balance of $85,000 was scheduled to be processed on my American Express Centurion card at 10 p.m. It is currently 9:30. I am instructing you to cancel that transaction immediately. I am also revoking the authorization for any incidental charges. Mr. Blackwood. Elena's voice rose, an octave, panic setting in. You cannot do that. The event is underway. The catering staff is serving the second course. The band is playing. The bar tab alone is over $20,000. If you pull the funding, the system will lock out the service. I know how the contract works, Elena. Clause 4, Section B. The primary payer reserves the right to terminate financial liability at any point before the final transaction clears. I am terminating it. But who is going to pay? I looked up as the valet pulled my 2015 Ford F-150 up to the curb. The engine rattled slightly. It was a good truck, reliable, unlike my son. Go find the groom, I said, or the bride, or her mother Linda. They seem to have very high standards. I am sure they have the funds to match them. Mr. Blackwood. Please, this will be a disaster. The hotel policy is strict. If the card is declined or removed, the manager has to shut down the service immediately. Then I suggest you find them quickly, Elena. Good night. I hung up. I opened the banking app on my phone. I selected the credit card linked to the wedding account. I tapped Freeze Card. Then, for good measure, I called the concierge line for my bank. This is Gordon Blackwood. Security code 94 Alpha Zulu. I want to report a potential unauthorized charge coming from the Grand Hotel. Block any transaction from that merchant ID effective immediately. Yes, thank you. I got into my truck. The leather seat was cracked in one spot, but it felt like home. I put the truck in gear and drove away from the hotel, merging onto the highway toward the quiet suburbs. I did not turn on the radio. I just drove, watching the city lights fade in the rearview mirror. 10 minutes passed. Silence. 20 minutes passed. Then my phone, which was sitting in the cup holder, lit up. It vibrated once. Then again. Then it began to dance across the console. Justin calling. I let it ring. Linda calling. I let it ring. Brittany calling. I let it ring. Within 5 minutes, I had 50 missed calls. The screen was a constant blur of names. I could visualize the scene back at the hotel. The manager, a man named Pierre, who did not tolerate non-payment, would have approached the head table. He would have tapped Justin on the shoulder. He would have asked for a card. Justin, who I knew for a fact had a credit limit of $2,000 and a bank account that was currently overdrawn, would have laughed nervously. He would have pointed to me, or where I used to be. Then the panic would set in. My phone pinged with a voicemail. I tapped the speakerphone button as I drove through the darkness. "You sick old man," it was Brittany. She was screaming so loud the microphone was distorting. "What did you do?" "The manager just cut the power to the band. They are taking the food away. They are clearing the tables. Put the card back on, now! You are ruining my life." I deleted the message. Another voicemail, this one from Justin. Dad, are you there? Please pick up. There is a mistake." The card was declined. "They are saying you canceled the payment." "Dad, the police are here. They say it is theft of services if we do not pay the $85,000 right now." "Dad, please." "Everyone is looking at us." Linda is crying. Brittany is throwing up in the bathroom. Pick up the phone. I deleted the message. I thought about the last 6 months. The way Justin had come to my house, sitting at my kitchen table crying because he wanted to give Brittany the wedding of her dreams. "Dad, it is an investment," he had said. "The people at this wedding, they are investors. If I can show them I am successful, my new tech startup will get funded. I just need this one boost." I had looked at my son. I saw the desperation. I saw the weakness. But I also saw my little boy. So I agreed. I told him I had some savings bonds I could liquidate. I let him believe it was a stretch for me. I let him believe I was scraping the bottom of the barrel to make this happen. I wanted him to appreciate it. Instead, he let his wife treat me like a stray dog. My phone pinged with a text message. It was from Linda. "Gordon, this is unacceptable. I will sue you. You cannot leave us with this bill. We do not have this kind of money. Turn the car around." I pulled over to the side of the road. I needed to send one message. Just one. I typed it out slowly, making sure every word was correct. "You told me I lowered the value of the wedding. You told me I was not welcome. I respected your wishes. I have removed myself and my money from the premises. Class cannot be bought, Linda. And apparently, neither can your dinner. Good luck." I hit send. Then I turned the phone off and threw it onto the passenger seat. I arrived home around 11 o'clock. My house is a simple 3-bedroom ranch on 2 acres of land. It is paid off. The taxes are low. It is quiet. Buster, my golden retriever, was waiting at the door, his tail wagging. He did not care about my suit. He did not care about my shoes. He was just happy I was home. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, cheap whiskey, because I actually liked the taste, and sat in my recliner. I stared at the blank television screen. I knew that tomorrow morning the war would begin. They would come here. They would come screaming and crying. But they did not know who they were dealing with. They thought they were fighting a lonely retired construction worker. They did not know they were fighting the man who had built half the skyline of the city they were partying in. They did not know that the business partners Justin was trying to impress were actually men I had mentored 20 years ago. They did not know that the bank they were likely trying to get an emergency loan from right now was a bank where I sat on the advisory board. I took a sip of whiskey. The wedding was over, but the lesson was just beginning. I woke up the next morning at 6 a.m. out of habit. The sun was just coming up over the trees. I made a pot of coffee and stepped out onto my front porch. The air was crisp. It was going to be a beautiful day. I checked my phone. 112 missed calls, 47 text messages. The texts from Justin were a timeline of the disaster. 10:15 p.m. Dad, they are kicking us out. 10:45 p.m. Stan tried to write a check, and it bounced. They are threatening to arrest him. 11:30 p.m. We are in the parking lot. Brittany won't stop screaming. 12:15 a.m. We can't go to the honeymoon suite. They canceled the reservation because the card is linked to the main account. 2 a.m. We are sleeping at Stan and Linda's house. Dad, how could you do this? I sipped my coffee. How could I do this? It was simple. I treated them exactly how they treated me. A transaction. They saw me as a wallet. I closed the wallet. I knew they would be coming over. Justin had a key to my house. Or he used to. I walked to the front door and looked at the deadbolt. 2 weeks ago, I had installed a new smart lock system. I pulled out my phone and disabled Justin's access code. He would not be walking in to raid my fridge this morning. Around 8:30, I heard the sound of a car engine revving too high. A sleek, black BMW pulled into my gravel driveway, kicking up dust. It was Justin's car, or rather the car I was making the lease payments on because he said he needed it for client appearances. Justin jumped out of the driver's seat. He was still wearing his tuxedo pants and a wrinkled white undershirt. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Brittany climbed out of the passenger side. She was wearing a tracksuit that looked expensive, but her hair was a bird's nest, and her mascara was smeared down her cheeks. They stormed up the porch steps. Dad Justin hammered on the door. "Open up." "We know you're in there." I stayed sitting in the kitchen watching them through the window. I finished my coffee. I put the mug in the sink and rinsed it. Then I walked to the door and opened it. I stood in the doorway, blocking the entrance. Gordon Brittany screamed, pushing past Justin. "You are a monster! Do you have any idea what you did? You humiliated me. My friends, my family. Everyone saw us get kicked out like criminals." I looked at her calmly. "Hello, Brittany. I see you are still upset." Upset, she looked ready to strike me. "Upset doesn't cover it. You owe us $85,000 plus damages for emotional distress. My father had to call a bail bondsman because the hotel manager tried to have him detained for fraud." "That sounds like a personal problem," I said. Justin stepped forward. His face was red. "Dad, stop it. This isn't funny. You have to fix this. Call the hotel. Wire the money. We can spin this. We can say it was a banking error. If you fix it now, Brittany might forgive you." I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Brittany might forgive me." Justin looked at me. He looked at me. His eyes were bloodshot. "I do not want her forgiveness. And I do not want yours. I want you off my porch." "Dad, be reasonable. We are supposed to be leaving for Hawaii tonight. The flights, the resort. I canceled those too," I said. "At 4 a.m. I got a refund on the first-class tickets. And the villa in Maui, I called the owner. I told him the couple had split up. He was very understanding." Brittany let out a sound that was half scream, half sob. "You canceled the honeymoon." "I paid for the honeymoon," I said. "Therefore, I canceled the honeymoon. Just like I paid for the lease on that BMW you drove here. Speaking of which, I pulled a second set of keys out of my pocket. These were the spare keys to the BMW. I pressed the button on the fob. The car locked. I called the dealership this morning," I said. "The lease is in my name. I initiated a voluntary repossession. The tow truck should be here in about 20 minutes. You might want to get your personal items out of it." Justin stared at me, his mouth open. "Dad, you can't. That's my car." "It is my car, Justin. It has always been my car. Just like this is my house. And my money. You have spent your entire adult life pretending that my hard work was your success. You play the big man, the CEO, the entrepreneur. But you are just a child playing dress-up in his father's clothes. And the game is over." Brittany grabbed Justin's arm. do something." "He is crazy. He is stealing everything." "He is not stealing," Justin whispered, looking at the ground. "He owns it all." "That is right," I said. "I own it all, and you two own nothing. Now get your things out of the car and get off my property." "Where are we supposed to go?" Brittany cried. "We gave up our apartment because we were moving into the lake house." "Ah, yes, the lake house. I had bought a beautiful 4-bedroom house on the lake 6 months ago. I had told Justin it was a wedding gift. I told him I would sign the deed over to them after the honeymoon. They had already moved their furniture in." "About that," I said. "I changed the locks on the lake house an hour ago. My attorney, Mr. Radcliffe, is meeting the movers there right now. Your furniture is being placed on the curb. I suggest you get there before it rains. The forecast calls for thunderstorms this afternoon." Justin looked at me with horror. "Dad, you are making us homeless." "No, Justin. I am making you independent. You are 28 years old. You have a wife, you have a degree I paid for. You have every advantage in the world. Figure it out." A large flatbed tow truck turned into the driveway. The driver waved at me. "There is your ride," I said. I stepped back and closed the door. I locked the deadbolt. Through the window, I watched them scramble to pull suitcases and bags out of the BMW as the driver hooked it up. Brittany was screaming at the driver. Justin was sitting on his suitcase, head in his hands, weeping. I felt a twinge of pain. No father wants to see his son suffer. But I knew that if I helped him now, I would be helping him into an early grave of incompetence and entitlement. I had to break him to save him. I went to my office and sat at my desk. I picked up the phone and dialed my lawyer, Mr. Radcliffe. Gordon Radcliffe answered on the first ring. "I am at the lake house. The locks are changed. The furniture is on the driveway. The neighbors are watching with great interest." "Good," I said. "Now let's talk about the next step." "Stan Caldwell, the father-in-law." "Yes. I want you to pull the public records on his real estate license. And I want you to contact the IRS tip line. I have reason to believe that the investments he has been pitching to my son are nothing more than a Ponzi scheme." "And Radcliffe?" "Yes, Gordon. Check the registry on the engagement ring Justin bought. I have a suspicion he charged it to the emergency credit card I gave him for medical expenses. I will look into it immediately." I hung up. The silence in the house was heavy, but it was clean. I looked at the photo on my desk. It was a picture of my wife and me taken 20 years ago. We were covered in drywall dust renovating our first rental property. We were tired, we were broke, but we were smiling. "I am sorry, Mary," I whispered to the photo. I let him get soft. "But I am going to fix it." I stood up. I had a lot of work to do. The wedding was just the beginning. I was about to dismantle their entire fake reality brick by brick, and when the dust settled, we would see who was left standing. The morning sun hit the pavement with a harsh, unforgiving glare, but I was not there to feel it. I was sitting in a climate-controlled conference room on the 42nd floor of the Radcliffe and Moore law firm, watching my life unfold on a high-definition tablet screen. The security feed from my doorbell camera was streaming live, and the audio was crisp enough to hear the desperation in my son's voice. Justin was pounding on the door of the 2-bedroom apartment I rented on the south side of the city. He was still wearing his tuxedo trousers, though the shirt was unbuttoned and stained with what looked like red wine and regret. Beside him, Brittany was a vision of marital wreckage. Her $12,000 Vera Wang dress was gray at the hem, dragging through the dust of the hallway, and her makeup had settled into dark, raccoon-like circles around her eyes. She wasn't screaming anymore. She just looked shell-shocked, leaning against the peeling paint of the doorframe like a puppet whose strings had been cut. "Open up," Justin yelled, his voice cracking. "Dad, we know you are in there. The truck is out back. We just want to talk." He was wrong, of course. My truck was parked in the underground garage of the law firm. I had left the apartment 3 hours ago, long before they managed to drag themselves out of whatever hole they had slept in. I watched as a neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, opened her door down the hall. She is a retired librarian who tolerates zero nonsense. I saw her mouth moving, pointing a finger at them, likely threatening to call the police if they didn't stop the racket. Justin shrank back, looking like a scolded child, while Brittany just stared at the floor. I turned the tablet over, silencing their misery. Across the mahogany table, Arthur Radcliffe set down his porcelain coffee cup. He is a man who charges $900 an hour, and he is worth every penny. He adjusted his spectacles and looked at the stack of documents I had placed between us. They have no idea, do they? Arthur asked, his voice low and smooth. No, I said, taking a sip of the dark roast coffee. They think I am a retired contractor living on a union pension and Social Security. They think that apartment is all I can afford. They think the pickup truck is a necessity, not a choice. Arthur opened the leather-bound portfolio. He ran a finger down the ledger of my assets, a list I had compiled late last night, while the adrenaline of the wedding was still pumping through my veins. Gordon, this is substantial, Arthur murmured, raising an eyebrow. I knew you had done well for yourself when you sold the construction firm, but I wasn't aware of the extent of the diversification. I leaned back in the leather chair. I wanted to see the numbers. I needed to see them. It was the armor I had built around myself, the fortress that Justin and Brittany had tried to besiege with their arrogance. Read it, I said. Arthur cleared his throat. Tax-free municipal bonds valued at $2.4 million. A commercial real estate portfolio, including 3 medical office buildings in the suburbs and a logistics warehouse near O'Hare, total valuation $12 million. A private equity stake in the green energy startup that just went public last quarter. And the liquid cash accounts. He stopped and looked up at me. You have been sitting on a liquid cash reserve of $800,000 while living in a rental unit that costs $1,200 a month, I nodded. It was a test, Arthur. A long, silent test. When Mary died 5 years ago, I realized something terrifying. I realized that Justin didn't know how to survive. He had grown up comfortable. Too comfortable. He saw my business as a magic ATM. When I sold the company, I told him I was retiring. I told him the market had taken a downturn, and I had to liquidate to cover debts. It was a lie. I put the money into trusts and bonds. I moved into the rental. I bought the old truck. I wanted to see if he could build his own ladder if I took away the elevator. And Arthur asked, though he already knew the answer. And he spent 5 years waiting for me to die, I said, the bitterness coating my tongue. He didn't try to build anything. He just engaged in performative entrepreneurship, launching businesses with no business plans, expecting me to bail him out. And I did. I quietly paid his rent. I paid his car lease. I paid for this wedding. I thought I was helping him keep his head above water until he learned to swim, but last night I realized I wasn't teaching him to swim. I was just paying for the pool while his wife held my head under the water. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. Chicago sprawled out below us, a grid of steel and ambition. Somewhere down there, my son was banging on a hollow door, thinking he was fighting for a few $1,000s, completely unaware that he had just declared war on the chairman of the board. Arthur closed the folder. The sound was heavy, final. So the lake house, Arthur said. The one they think is their wedding gift. It is in a blind trust, I said, not turning away from the window. The deed was never transferred. I let them move their furniture in early as a kindness. There is no lease. There is no rental agreement. Legally, they are squatters. And the credit cards. Supplementary cards on my primary account. I had set a limit, but I removed the limit for the wedding expenses. Last night I reported them lost and stolen. The banks have already flagged his Social Security number for potential fraud review because of the volume of transactions he tried to push through after I locked the cards. Arthur tapped his pen on the desk. You know what they will do next, Gordon. When they realize the apartment is empty and the bank accounts are frozen, they will go to the in-laws. Stan and Linda Caldwell. I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Stan Caldwell, the man who ordered a bottle of Dom Perignon on my tab last night before the appetizers even hit the table. Let them go to Stan. That is exactly where I want them. Why? Because Stan is a house of cards, I said, turning back to face my lawyer. I did some digging of my own before the wedding. Stan talks a big game about real estate development, but he is leveraged to the hilt. He has been moving money between shell companies to keep the IRS off his back. If Justin and Brittany go to him for money, they are going to find a dry well. And when desperate people find a dry well, they start looking for someone to blame. I walked back to the table and placed my hand on the portfolio of assets. They humiliated me, Arthur. They treated me like a servant in front of the people I used to employ. Brittany looked at my shoes and saw a peasant. She didn't know she was standing on the neck of the man who owns the mortgage on her parents' house. I checked my watch. It was 9 a.m. They are probably leaving the apartment now, I said. They will be heading to the lake house hoping to regroup, hoping to find a place to sleep. The movers should be finished by now. Arthur noted, checking his own phone. Good. I want you to send a courier to the lake house. I want a formal eviction notice posted on the door before they arrive. And Arthur? Yes, I want you to draft a document, a full disclosure of assets. I want every bond, every building, every penny listed. You want to show them, not yet. I want it ready. I want to have it in my pocket for the moment they think they have won. I want them to see exactly what they threw away. I want to see the look on Brittany's face when she realizes that the janitor could have bought the hotel she kicked him out of. I finished my coffee. The caffeine was doing its job, sharpening my focus. The hurt was still there deep in my chest, a dull ache where my fatherly pride used to be. But it was being overtaken by a cold, mechanical resolve. I am not going back to the apartment, I said. Book me a suite at the Peninsula. I have some business to conduct and I am done pretending to be poor. If they want to see me, they can make an appointment. I picked up my phone. 0 missed calls in the last hour. They had stopped panicking and started plotting. Good. A plotting enemy is predictable. A panicked one is chaotic. Let's get to work, Arthur. I want to audit the wedding planner's final invoice. I have a feeling Stan Caldwell tried to charge his tuxedo rental to the main account. As I walked out of the conference room, I felt a strange sense of liberation. The secret was out, at least in this room. The weight of the deception was gone. I was Gordon Blackwood, tycoon builder father, and I was about to teach my son the most expensive lesson of his life. The sky over Lake Michigan was bruising into a deep, angry purple by the time I arrived at the property. The humidity was thick enough to chew on a heavy blanket of moisture that promised a violent storm within the hour. I sat in the back of the black town car my lawyer Arthur had arranged, watching the scene unfold through tinted glass. It was a scene of domestic devastation, but not the kind caused by fire or flood. This was the wreckage of entitlement colliding with reality. The lake house was a sprawling, mid-century modern structure with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the water. I had bought it 6 months ago through a shell company. I had let Justin believe it was a wedding gift, a place for him to start his family. I had given him the keys early so they could move their things in before the ceremony. It was supposed to be a sanctuary. Now it looked like a yard sale for the morally bankrupt. A white moving van was parked perpendicular to the garage, blocking the exit. 2 men in blue coveralls were efficiently marching back and forth from the front door to the driveway, carrying armfuls of designer clothes, boxes of electronics, and artwork. They were not packing these items. They were simply depositing them on the manicured lawn. A pile of Louis Vuitton luggage sat near the mailbox like discarded trash. A 60-inch television leaned precariously against a maple tree. I saw a yellow taxi pull up to the curb. The brakes squealed a sharp sound that cut through the heavy air. The back doors flew open before the car had even come to a complete stop. Justin stumbled out first. He was still wearing the wrinkled tuxedo pants and the stained undershirt from the morning confrontation at my apartment. He looked frantic, his eyes darting from the movers to the house to the pile of his belongings on the grass. Brittany followed him. She was still in her expensive tracksuit, but the arrogance that usually defined her posture was gone, replaced by a manic, terrified energy. She ran toward the front door, screaming something I could not hear through the glass of the car. She tried to push past one of the movers, a large man who looked like he moved pianos for sport. He didn't even flinch. He simply stepped sideways, blocking her path with the indifference of a mountain. I signaled to my driver. He nodded and killed the engine. I opened the door and stepped out into the humid afternoon. The smell of ozone and impending rain was strong. I walked up the driveway. The gravel crunched under my dress shoes. It was a distinct sound, rhythmic and heavy. Justin heard it first. He spun around, his face pale and sweaty. When he saw me, his expression crumpled. It wasn't anger anymore. It was the look of a child who realizes the nightmare is not a dream. "Dad," Justin gasped, running toward me. "Dad, stop them. They are looting the house. Call the police. These men are stealing our things." I stopped walking. I stood with my hands clasped behind my back, watching the movers bring out a white leather sofa that Brittany had insisted was essential for her mental well-being. They set it down on the grass right next to a sprinkler head. "They are not stealing, Justin," I said, my voice calm and carrying easily in the still air. "They are evicting." Brittany came charging down the steps. Her face was red, her hair matted to her forehead with sweat. She pointed a trembling finger at me. "You cannot do this, Gordon. This is illegal. This is our home. We have rights. You gave us this house. We have witnesses. You said it was a wedding gift." I looked at her. I looked at the house. Then I looked at the locksmith, who was kneeling at the front door. The high-pitched whine of a drill pierced the air as he bored out the lock cylinder. It was a violent final sound. "I said I would sign the deed over after the honeymoon," I corrected her. "I said it would be a gift for a couple starting their life together with integrity. But that couple does not exist. The wedding was canceled. The honeymoon was canceled. And the gift is revoked." "That is not how it works," Brittany screamed, stomping her foot on the pavement. "We live here. We have residency. You have to give us 30 days' notice. You have to go to court. You can't just throw us out on the street." I pulled a folded document from the inside pocket of my jacket. It was crisp and white. "Actually, Brittany, I can. Because you do not live here. Not officially. There is no lease. There are no utility bills in your name because I paid them. There is no mail addressed to you here because you haven't changed your address yet. In the eyes of the law, you are guests who have overstayed their welcome. And guests can be asked to leave." I handed the document to Justin. He took it with shaking hands. "What is this?" he whispered. "That is a criminal trespass notice," I said. "It states that you have been formally warned that you are not permitted on this property. If you remain here after the locksmith finishes his work, which looks to be about 5 minutes from now, you will be arrested." Justin looked at the paper, then at the house, then at me. "But Dad, where are we supposed to go? We don't have a car. We don't have any money. Our credit cards are not working. We can't even get a hotel room." I looked at the pile of luxury goods on the lawn. I saw a set of golf clubs that cost more than my first car. I saw Brittany's collection of handbags easily worth $20,000. "You have assets," I said, gesturing to the pile. "I suggest you start selling them. There is a pawn shop about 4 miles down the road. If you start walking now, you might make it before they close." Brittany let out a guttural shriek and lunged at me. It was a feral, desperate move. Justin grabbed her around the waist, holding her back. She thrashed in his arms, screaming obscenities that would have made a sailor blush. "I hate you," she yelled. spit flying from her mouth. I hate you, you miserable old man. I hope you die alone. You are jealous because we are young and beautiful, and you are just a sad, lonely widower. I did not flinch. I watched her tantrum, with the detached interest of a scientist observing a lab rat. I am not lonely, Brittany, I said softly. I have my dignity, and tonight I will have a roof over my head. Can you say the same? The locksmith stood up. He brushed metal shavings off his knees and turned to me. All done, Mr. Blackwood. New deadbolts are installed. Side doors are secured. Garage code is reset. Here are the new keys. He handed me a heavy brass ring with 2 keys on it. I took them. The metal was cool in my palm. Thank you, I said. Please ensure the gate is locked when you leave. I turned back to my son. He was still holding Brittany, who had dissolved into sobbing hysterics. He looked at me with eyes that were pleading for a lifeline, for a bailout, for the safety net he had relied on for 28 years. Dad, please, he choked out. Just for tonight. Just let us sleep inside tonight. Look at the sky. It is going to storm. All our stuff is out here. It will be ruined. I looked up at the clouds. A rumble of thunder rolled across the lake, deep and vibrating. The first drops of rain began to fall, fat and cold. They hit the white leather sofa, leaving dark, wet spots. Then you better start covering it up, I said. I turned and walked back to the town car. The driver held the door open for me. I paused before getting in. I looked back one last time. Justin had let go of Brittany and was frantically trying to drag the mattress toward the garage overhang, but the garage door was closed and locked. Brittany was on her knees in the gravel, trying to stuff clothes back into a suitcase that had popped open. The rain was falling harder now, a steady soaking downpour. It was a cruel scene. I knew that. I felt the ache of it in my own bones, but I also knew that if I opened that door, if I let them in, if I saved them from the rain, they would never learn to build their own shelter. They would spend the rest of their lives waiting for me to hold the umbrella. I got into the car. The door closed with a solid, expensive thud, sealing out the sound of the rain and their weeping. Drive, I said to the driver. Where to, Mr. Blackwood? The country club, I said. I believe Stan Caldwell is having a late lunch there. I want to have a word with him before his appetizers arrive. The car pulled away, tires hissing on the wet pavement. I did not look back. I opened my portfolio and pulled out the file labeled Caldwell Investments. It was thick with documents my private investigator had compiled over the last 48 hours. Tax liens, lawsuits, shell companies. Stan Caldwell had been playing a dangerous game with money he didn't have, and he had been counting on my son's marriage to my bank account to save him. I adjusted my tie in the rearview mirror. My face looked older than I remembered, lines etched deep around my mouth and eyes. But my eyes were clear. The fog of grief and guilt that had clouded my judgment since Mary died was gone. I was seeing the world in high definition again. The rain hammered against the roof of the car, a drumroll for the war that was just beginning. Justin and Brittany were wet and homeless, but that was just the opening skirmish. The real battle was against the man who had taught them that greed was a virtue and that family was a resource to be mined. Stan Caldwell thought he was a shark. He was about to find out he was just a minnow in a tank with a leviathan. I tapped the file with my finger. It was time to go fishing. The rain was coming down in sheets now, a relentless gray curtain that turned the world into a blurred watercolor of misery. I sat in the dry, leather-scented warmth of the town car, my hand hovering over the window controls. I should have told the driver to leave. I should have driven away and left them to the storm they had created. But Brittany was not done. She was standing by the locked gate of the lake house, her expensive heels sinking into the mud, screaming over the roar of the thunder. She was pounding her fists against the metal bars, a portrait of a woman who had never been told no in her entire life. Justin stood a few feet behind her, looking like a wet dog that had been kicked. He was shivering, his arms wrapped around himself, his eyes fixed on the ground. He knew what was coming. He knew what I had in the folder resting on my lap. But Brittany, in her arrogance, still believed this was a negotiation. She still believed she had leverage. I rolled the window down 3 inches. The cold, wet air rushed in, carrying the sound of her voice. "This is illegal, Gordon," she shrieked, her mascara running in black rivers down her neck. "You cannot kick us out. We have rights." Justin signed the papers for this house. He told me the title was in his name. We have equity. We have marital assets. You are stealing our property. I looked at her. She was so convinced of her own narrative. She truly believed she was the victim of a senile old man's tantrum. I signaled the driver to wait. I opened the door and stepped out into the rain again. I did not bother with an umbrella. I walked to the gate, stopping just inches from where Brittany was gripping the bars. "What papers, Brittany?" I asked, my voice cutting through her hysteria. "What papers did Justin sign?" She pointed a shaking finger at my son. "He showed me last week. He showed me the loan documents. He secured a $200,000 equity line against the house to fund his new venture capital firm. He signed the mortgage deed. That proves ownership. If he borrowed against the house, he owns the house. So open this gate right now, or I will call the police and have you arrested for grand larceny." I looked past her directly at Justin. He had turned a sickly shade of green. He was shaking his head frantically, mouthing the word "no" over and over again, begging me with his eyes to keep his secret. He looked pathetic. He looked like a child who had broken a vase and was trying to hide the pieces under the rug. But the vase was already shattered. I opened my waterproof portfolio. I pulled out a single document encased in a plastic sleeve to protect it from the rain. It was a photocopy of a loan application from a predatory online lender, the kind that advertises on late-night television and charges criminal interest rates. "Is this the document you are talking about?" I asked, holding it up against the bars of the gate. Brittany squinted through the rain. "Yes. That is the loan approval, $200,000. Justin's name is right there. And—" She stopped. Her eyes widened. She leaned closer, pressing her face against the cold metal. "And your name, Gordon," she whispered. "Your signature is on the cosigner line." I looked at the signature. It was a clumsy forgery. It looked like someone had tried to copy my signature from a birthday card, but their hand had been shaking too much from fear or adrenaline. "That is not my signature, Brittany," I said coldly. "I did not sign this. I did not authorize this. And do you know how I know about it?" She looked at me, then back at Justin. Justin had dropped to his knee in the mud. He was sobbing now, great heaving breaths that racked his entire body. "I know because the lender called me," I said. "They called me 3 days ago to verify my employment history. They were suspicious because the Social Security number Justin provided for me was off by 1 digit. He was so desperate, so sloppy, that he couldn't even steal my identity correctly." I turned my gaze to Justin. He flinched as if I had struck him. "Stand up," I commanded. He didn't move. "Stand up," I roared, my voice echoing off the trees. He scrambled to his feet, swaying unsteadily. "Tell your wife, Justin. Tell her what you did." "Dad. Please," he whimpered. "Don't. Not now." "Tell her." Justin looked at Brittany. He looked at the woman he had married to impress the woman whose approval he craved like a drug. I forged it," he whispered. "I forged Dad's name on the deed transfer. I tried to transfer the title to myself so I could take out the loan. I needed the cash." Brittany stared at him. The rain plastered her hair to her skull. She looked like she was seeing a stranger. "You forged it?" she asked, her voice trembling. "But why? You said the business was doing great. You said you had investors lining up. You said we had millions in the pipeline. Why would you need a high-interest loan for $200,000? Because there is no business, Brittany, I interjected. There never was. Justin's venture capital firm is a laptop and a gambling addiction. I pulled out the second sheet of paper. This one was a transaction log from an offshore betting site. It was pages long, thousands of small bets, hundreds of large ones, sports, crypto futures, online poker. It was a manifesto of self-destruction. He didn't need the money for a business, I said, shoving the paper through the bars so she could see the red ink. He needed it to cover his losses. He is down $180,000 in the last 6 months. He was going to mortgage this house, my house, to pay off a bookie in Las Vegas. Brittany took the paper. Her hands were shaking so bad she almost dropped it. She scanned the lines. Her eyes darted back and forth, reading the timestamps, the amounts, the losses. DraftKings, she whispered. Bitcoin Volatility Index. Justin. You lost $50,000 on a football game. Justin began to cry harder. It was a sure thing, Britt. I had insider info. I was going to double it. I was going to pay for the house outright. I was doing it for us. Brittany looked up from the paper. Her face was pale, devoid of blood. The anger was gone, replaced by a pure, unadulterated shock. She looked at her husband, the man she thought was a tech mogul, the man she thought was her ticket to a life of leisure. And she saw him for what he was. A fraud. A liar. A broke gambler standing in the mud in a rented tuxedo. You are broke, she asked, her voice barely audible over the rain. I have some assets. Justin pleaded, reaching for her hand. Brittany recoiled as if he were contagious. I have the car, I have. You have nothing, she screamed, throwing the paper in his face. You have nothing. Your dad repossessed the car. The house isn't ours. You don't have a job. You are in debt, she turned to me. Her eyes were wild, searching for a lifeline. Gordon, you have to help us. You can't let him go to jail. If he forged your signature, that is a felony. They will lock him up. You have to pay it off. You have the money. Please, for the family. I looked at her. Even now, after everything, her first instinct was to ask me to open my wallet. She didn't care about the betrayal. She didn't care about the lie. She only cared about the consequences. I already handled it, I said. She let out a breath of relief. Oh, thank God. Thank you, Gordon. I knew you wouldn't. I bought the debt, I said, cutting her off. Her smile faltered. What, the lender was going to go to the police, I explained. They don't like fraud. So I made a deal. I bought the promissory note. I paid off the $200,000. So it is gone? Justin asked, hope lighting up his wet face. You paid it? No. Justin, I didn't pay it for you. I bought it. That means I am now the holder of your debt. You owe me $200,000. And unlike the online lender, I am not going to charge you 20% interest. I paused. They both looked at me, waiting. I am going to charge you nothing, I said. But I am going to hold that note. And if you ever come near me or my property again, if you ever try to contact my business associates, if you ever try to leverage my name for one of your schemes, I will file that note with the district attorney. I will press charges for forgery, wire fraud, and identity theft. I will put you in a cell for 10 years. Justin stared at me. The hope died in his eyes, replaced by a cold, hard fear. He realized finally that the safety net was gone. The ATM was broken. The dad who always fixed it was now the judge, jury, and executioner. But, Brittany stammered, if he owes you the money, and he has no money, how do we live? How do we eat? That is a question for your husband, I said. He is the entrepreneur. I am sure he will figure it out. Maybe he can bet on the weather. I turned my back on them. I walked to the car. I could hear Brittany screaming at Justin behind me. She was hitting him. I heard the slap of wet skin on wet skin. She was cursing him, calling him a loser, a liar, a failure. I did not turn around. I got into the car and closed the door. The sound of the storm muffled their voices, turning their tragedy into background noise. To the country club, I said to the driver. As the car pulled away, I looked at the folder on the seat next to me. The evidence of my son's corruption. It was heavy. But leaving it there, leaving him there in the mud with the truth, that felt lighter than I expected. He wanted to be a big man. He wanted to play with high stakes. Well, he had just lost the biggest hand of his life. And his wife, the woman who loved his potential more than his person, was realizing she had bet on a horse with a broken leg. I took a deep breath. The air in the car was cool and dry. The chaos was behind me. Ahead of me was Stan Caldwell. And unlike Justin, Stan wasn't just a fool. He was a predator. And predators required a different kind of trap. The air conditioning in the penthouse suite of the Peninsula Hotel was set to a crisp 68 degrees, but as I listened to the digital audio file playing through my laptop speakers, I felt a heat rising in my collar that had nothing to do with the temperature. It was the heat of a specific burning rage, the kind of rage that doesn't make you scream, but makes you very, very quiet. My private investigator, a man who moved through the city like smoke and charged fees that would make a surgeon blush, had placed a listening device in the dining room of Stan and Linda Caldwell's house. It wasn't legal in a courtroom, perhaps, but in the court of public opinion and strategic warfare, it was ammunition. I poured myself a glass of water and turned the volume up. The scene I was visualizing was pathetic. Justin and Brittany, less than 48 hours after their wedding catastrophe, were living out of suitcases in the guest bedroom of her parents' house in the suburbs. The Caldwell house was one of those McMansions built in the early 2000s, all stucco and fake columns, designed to look impressive from the street, but constructed with cheap materials that were already starting to rot. It was the perfect metaphor for Stan Caldwell himself. The audio crackled, then cleared. I heard the clink of silverware on china. "Pass the potatoes," Stan's voice boomed. He sounded jovial, the fake cheer of a salesman who is about to pitch a lemon to a blind man. "So, Justin, how is the job hunt going? Or are we still calling it networking?" There was a silence followed by the scrape of a chair. "I am working on it, Stan," Justin mumbled. "It is hard without the car. Taking the bus to the city takes 2 hours, and my laptop, Dad locked me out of the cloud account. All my contacts were in there." "He is doing this on purpose," Brittany whined. Her voice was shrill, grating. "He is trying to starve us out. Mom, do you know what he said to me at the gate? He told me to sell my purses. My purses. They are vintage. They are investments." I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes. I could see them. Justin slumped over his plate, defeated. Brittany indignant and spoiled. And Stan? Stan was the shark circling the wounded fish. "Listen to me, kids," Stan said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "You are looking at this all wrong. You are acting like victims. You need to start acting like plaintiffs." "Plaintiffs?" Justin asked. "Yes, plaintiffs." Stan paused for effect. "Look, I have been in business a long time. I know how these things work. Your father, Gordon, he isn't just being mean. He is acting irrationally. Think about it. Who cancels a wedding in the middle of the soup course? Who evicts his own son during a thunderstorm? Who buys up a debt just to hold it over his child's head?" "A sociopath," Brittany suggested. "No," Stan corrected her. "A man who is losing his grip. A man who is mentally declining." My hand tightened around the water glass. I set it down carefully before I crushed it. "What do you mean?" Justin asked. "I mean he is old, Justin. He is 66. He has been living alone for 5 years since your mother died. Isolation does things to the brain. Paranoia, erratic behavior, delusions of grandeur. He thinks he is some tycoon living in that dump of an apartment. It doesn't add up. He is hoarding money like a squirrel, then lashing out when anyone gets close to it. I listened fascinated by the narrative he was spinning. Stan Caldwell, a man who had leveraged his own home 3 times to pay for failed investments, was diagnosing me. "So what are you saying?" Justin asked. "I am saying we change the game," Stan said. "We don't ask for forgiveness. We sue for control. We petition the court for an emergency guardianship." There was a gasp from the table. Probably Linda. "Guardianship?" Linda asked. Like for a child." "Exactly like for a child," Stan said, sounding pleased with himself. "Or for an elderly person who can no longer manage their own affairs. We argue that Gordon Blackwood is suffering from early-onset dementia or some kind of cognitive decline. We use the wedding incident as Exhibit A. A public meltdown, irrational financial decisions that caused significant harm to his family. We frame it as a cry for help." "But he isn't crazy," Justin said weakly. "He is just mad. He caught me forging the signature Stan. He has the proof." Stan laughed. "A forgery." "Justin, listen to me. That is just a detail. If he is mentally incompetent, then he couldn't have authorized the loan right. But if we control his estate, we can make that debt disappear. We can argue that he promised you the house when he was lucid and then forgot or reneged during an episode. We paint a picture of a confused old man who needs his family to step in and take over the checkbook before he hurts himself." Brittany's voice perked up. "If we get guardianship, do we get access to the accounts?" "Everything," Stan said. "The bonds, the real estate, the cash. We become the trustees. We give ourselves a nice monthly stipend for caregiving expenses. We move him into a nice facility where professionals can watch him, and you two move back into the lake house to maintain the asset." "It is brilliant," Brittany breathed. "It is perfect. He humiliated me. He ruined my wedding. This is justice. He obviously isn't right in the head. No sane father does that to his son." I waited for Justin to defend me. I waited for my son, the boy I taught to ride a bike, the boy I held when he cried over his first breakup, to speak up. I waited for him to say, "No, Dad is sharp as a tack. He is just teaching me a lesson I deserve." Instead, I heard the sound of wine being poured into a glass. "Do you think it would work?" Justin asked softly. "With the right lawyer," Stan said. "Absolutely. I know a guy. A real shark. He specializes in elder law. He owes me a favor. We can file an emergency motion for a competency hearing. We freeze his assets pending the evaluation. That stops him from selling the house or donating the money. It ties his hands." "And the forgery?" Justin asked again. "He is terrified of that promissory note. If he is declared incompetent, his testimony is worthless," Stan assured him. "We say he told you to sign it because his arthritis was bad, then he forgot. Who is the judge going to believe, a young grieving son trying to help his business, or a crazy old man living in a rental who thinks he is a billionaire?" I stopped the recording. The silence in the hotel suite was heavy. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. The lights of Chicago glittered like diamonds on black velvet. Down there in the suburbs, a man I had never done harm to was plotting to strip me of my freedom. He was plotting to lock me away in a facility, medicate me into oblivion, and spend the fortune I had built with 40 years of sweat and blood. And my son was going to let him. I felt a coldness settle over me that was different from the anger I had felt at the wedding. The wedding was a tantrum. This was an act of war. This was a threat to my existence. Stan Caldwell wasn't just a greedy fool anymore. He was a predator. He was dangerous. I picked up my phone and dialed Arthur Radcliffe. It was late, almost 11 p.m., but Arthur answered on the first ring. "Gordon, is everything all right?" "No, Arthur, it is not. I need you to hire a forensic accountant, and I need you to contact the district attorney's office. What happened? I just received intelligence that Stan Caldwell is conspiring to file for a guardianship over me. He intends to claim I am mentally incompetent to seize control of my assets. He is bringing Justin into the fold. There was a long pause on the line. Then I heard the sound of Arthur taking off his glasses and setting them on his desk. "That is aggressive," Arthur said, "and incredibly stupid." "It is," I agreed, "but it is also dangerous. If they file an emergency motion, a judge could freeze my accounts temporarily while they investigate. It would be a nuisance." "I don't want a nuisance, Arthur. I want a nuclear deterrent." "What do you want to do?" "I want to destroy Stan Caldwell," I said calmly. "I want to take him apart piece by piece. You mentioned the IRS tip line yesterday. Did you call them?" "We prepared the dossier," Arthur said. "We haven't sent it yet." "Send it," I ordered. "Tonight. And add something else. I want you to look into a property development Stan did 5 years ago. The Oaks at Riverview. The condo complex, I remember that. It had structural issues. It had more than structural issues," I said. "I was the one who refused to bid on the foundation work because the soil was unstable. Stan found a cheaper contractor who cut corners. I have the original soil reports in my archives. If those reports come to light, Stan isn't just looking at bankruptcy. He is looking at criminal negligence lawsuits from every owner in that complex." "I will find them," Arthur said. And Arthur, yes. Prepare a countersuit. Defamation of character. Abuse of process. Conspiracy to commit fraud. And draft a restraining order against Stan, Linda, Brittany, and Justin. If they want to claim I am crazy, I want to show the court that I am the only one sane enough to protect myself from these vultures. Consider it done." I hung up the phone. I looked at my reflection in the dark glass of the window. I didn't look like a victim. I didn't look like a confused old man. I looked like a general on the eve of battle. Stan Caldwell wanted to play the senility card. He wanted to use the legal system as a weapon. He didn't know that I helped write the building codes in this city. He didn't know that the judge he was planning to petition was a man I played golf with every third Sunday of the month. They were coming for my mind. They were coming for my freedom. Let them come. I would be waiting. And when they arrived, they wouldn't find a feeble old man. They would find a fortress with the gates open and the cannons loaded. I went back to the table and opened my laptop. I had one more message to send. Not to Justin, not to Brittany, but to the public. If they wanted to spread rumors that I was losing my mind, I was going to control the narrative. I logged into my LinkedIn account. I had not posted in years, but I still had thousands of connections, CEOs, developers, bankers, city officials. I began to type. To my friends and colleagues in the Chicago business community, it has come to my attention that rumors regarding my health and mental acuity are being circulated by parties with a vested financial interest in my estate. Let me be clear, I am currently conducting a comprehensive audit of my holdings and preparing to launch a new philanthropic foundation. To those who attempt to leverage family connections for personal gain, take note, the bank is closed, the bridge is burned, and the truth is coming. I hit post. The war had moved from the shadows to the light. Stan Caldwell wanted a public spectacle. I would give him one. But he wasn't going to like the ending. The notification popped up on my iPad screen at 7 in the evening. It was a push alert from a social media platform I barely used, sent to me by my private investigator, with a simple note that read, "Watch this. Do not respond." I sat in the quiet luxury of the hotel suite. A cup of lukewarm tea untouched on the table, and tapped the link. The screen filled with the image of Brittany. She was sitting cross-legged on what looked like a mattress on a floor. The lighting was dim, designed to cast shadows under her eyes, making her look gaunt and exhausted. She was wearing a baggy t-shirt, not the expensive designer clothes she usually flaunted. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and her face was scrubbed clean of makeup. She looked like a refugee. It was a masterclass in visual manipulation. The red live counter in the corner ticked upward. 5,000 viewers, 10,000, 20,000. "Hey guys," Brittany whispered, her voice cracking perfectly on the second word. "I know I haven't posted in a while. I know you all wanted to see wedding photos. But there aren't any." She wiped a tear from her cheek. She held her hand there for a moment, letting the camera focus on the fact that her ring finger was bare. I had the engagement ring, of course. It was in my safe deposit box, along with the repossessed car keys. "My father-in-law," she continued, sniffing loudly. "Gordon Blackwood, a man who has more money than God, a man who owns half the city. He decided he didn't like me. He decided I wasn't good enough for his precious son. So on the night of our wedding, in front of everyone, he cut us off. He canceled the venue. He locked us out of our home. He threw us out into the rain like garbage. The comments section on the side of the screen was moving so fast, it was a blur of rage. What a monster. Eat the rich. Drop his address, we write at dawn. How can a father do that to his son?" I watched my face, impassive. She was good. She was very, very good. She wasn't just telling a story. She was building a narrative of class warfare. She was the innocent, struggling girl, and I was the cruel, hoarding tycoon. "We are staying in my parents' basement." Brittany sobbed, looking around the room as if it were a dungeon. "We have nothing. Justin is broken. He can't stop crying. We don't have a car. We don't have our clothes. We don't even have money for food because he froze our accounts." She leaned into the camera, her eyes wide and pleading. "And the worst part is..." She paused, taking a shaky breath. "I wasn't going to say this. I wanted to keep it private. But I have to think about the future now. I'm pregnant." I stiffened. The tea in my cup rippled as my hand hit the table. "Pregnant. I'm scared for the baby," Brittany wept. "Stress is bad for the baby. And we don't have health insurance anymore because Gordon canceled it. He knows. He knows I'm carrying his first grandchild, and he left us to rot. How can a human being be so heartless?" The internet exploded. If the comments were angry before, they were murderous now. The viewer count jumped to 50,000. Hashtags started trending instantly. Hashtag boycott Blackwood. Hashtag justice for Brittany. My phone on the desk began to ring. It was Arthur Radcliffe. I ignored it. Then it rang again. A call from the PR firm that handled my charitable foundation. Ignored. Then a call from a reporter at the Chicago Tribune. Ignored. I did not type a comment. I did not issue a statement. I sat in the silence of my suite and watched her perform. I knew exactly what she was doing. She was trying to bait me. She wanted me to engage. She wanted me to go online and defend myself, to say, "No, I didn't know she was pregnant," or "They forged my signature." Because the moment I engaged, it would become a debate. It would become a he said, she said drama where the public would naturally side with the weeping pregnant woman over the wealthy old man. Silence was my shield. Silence made me a monolith. But beneath the silence, my mind was racing. Pregnant. If she was telling the truth, it complicated things. A grandchild. My blood. The continuation of the Blackwood line. For a fleeting second, doubt crept in. Was I being too harsh? Was I punishing an innocent child for the sins of the parents? Then I remembered the timing. I remembered the way she had looked at me at the wedding, the pure, unadulterated venom in her eyes. I remembered the conversation I had overheard on the wiretap. Stan Caldwell, plotting to declare me insane. And I remembered something else. A small detail from my private investigator's report that I hadn't fully processed until now. Brittany had been spending a lot of time at a specific country club 3 months ago, a club where Justin was not a member, a club where her ex-boyfriend, a semi-pro golfer named Trent, worked as an instructor. I grabbed my notebook. I wrote down the date. I calculated the weeks. If she was pregnant, and if she was showing an ultrasound picture which she was now holding up to the camera, a grainy black and white image, the timeline was tight. Very tight. I picked up my phone and texted my investigator. I need a DNA sample. I don't care how you get it, but I need to know if that child is a Blackwood. Brittany was winding down her stream now. Please, she said, linking a crowdfunding page in the chat. If you can help us, anything helps. We just want to get back on our feet. We just want to be safe from him. The donations started pouring in. I saw the ticker go up. $5,000. 10,000. She was monetizing her misery in real time. She ended the stream with a wave and a brave, trembling smile. The screen went black. I stood up and walked to the window. The city lights below seemed colder tonight. They were hunting me now. The court of public opinion had delivered its verdict, and I was guilty. My phone buzzed again. A text from Arthur. Gordon, we need to issue a denial. The press is camping out in the lobby of your old apartment building. They are harassing your neighbors, I typed back. Let them. Do not say a word. Silence is the only answer they cannot twist. I knew what I had to do. They wanted a villain, fine. I would be the villain. But villains are dangerous because they are patient. Brittany thought she had won the internet. She didn't realize that internet fame is smoke. It clears, and when the smoke cleared, facts would remain. I looked at the notes on my desk, the forged loan, the gambling debts, and now the pregnancy. She had played her ace. She had used the unborn child as a weapon. That was a mistake, because if that child wasn't Justin's, and my gut told me it wasn't, then she hadn't just lied to the internet. She was committing paternity fraud, and she was doing it to extort money from my estate. I sat back down at the computer. I pulled up the security footage from the wedding venue, specifically the camera that covered the bridal suite before the ceremony. I had access because, after all, I paid for it. I fast-forwarded. There. Brittany holding a glass of champagne. Drinking it. An hour later. Another glass. If she knew she was pregnant, she was drinking. If she didn't know, then the timeline she gave on the stream was a lie. I saved the clip. The smear campaign was ugly. It was painful. It damaged my reputation. But it also made them overconfident. They thought they had me pinned down. They thought I was hiding in shame. I wasn't hiding. I was waiting. I was letting them gather all the rope they needed to hang themselves. Let them have their likes and their shares. Let them have their crowdfunding money. It would run out. Stan Caldwell would steal it, or Justin would gamble it away. And when it was gone, they would be back. And I would be ready. The silence in the room was heavy, but it wasn't empty. It was filled with the cold, hard weight of the truth I was assembling piece by piece. They wanted a war, they had one. And I had just located the nuclear button. The coffee in my cup had gone cold, but I did not signal for a refill. I was sitting in a booth at the back of a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of the city, a place where the vinyl seats were cracked and the air smelled of bacon grease and stale smoke. It was the kind of place where people went to be invisible. It was the perfect office for a man like Vance. Vance slid into the booth opposite me. He didn't look like a private investigator from the movies. He looked like a tired accountant, wearing a beige windbreaker and wire-rimmed glasses. He carried a padded manila envelope, which he placed on the table between us, with a heavy, dull thud. "You aren't going to like this," Gordon Vance said, his voice gravelly from years of talking into recording devices. "I am not paying you to make me happy, Vance. I am paying you for the truth." He nodded and opened the envelope. He pulled out 2 distinct stacks of paper. One was thick bound with a rubber band. The other was a single sealed laboratory envelope. "Let's start with the father-in-law," Stan Caldwell, Vance said, tapping the thick stack. "I ran the forensic audit you asked for. I pulled his credit reports, his tax filings from the last 5 years, and I accessed the transaction history of the supplementary credit card you gave Justin. And Stan Caldwell isn't just broke Gordon. He is a thief, and he has been stealing from you for 6 months." I picked up the stack of financial documents. My eyes scanned the highlighted rows. "You gave Justin that card for wedding expenses and emergencies, right?" Vance asked. "Correct. Look at page 4. I flipped to the page. March 12th, Home Depot, $4,000. March 15th, Audi of Chicago Service Center, $2,000. April 2nd, the Golden Steer Steakhouse, $800. "Those aren't wedding expenses," I said, my voice low. "No. And they weren't made by Justin." I cross-referenced the timestamps with Justin's location data from his phone provider. On March 12th, Justin was in a meeting with the graphic designer for his website. Stan Caldwell's phone, however, pinged off a tower right next to the Home Depot. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. Stan had been using my son. He had treated Justin's wallet, my wallet, like his personal piggy bank. He took the card. I asked, Justin gave it to him, Vance corrected. Or rather, Stan convinced him to hand it over. I found a text thread between them. Stan told Justin he needed to buy materials for the wedding arch. He told Justin he needed to take some investors out to dinner to help launch Justin's business. He played on the boy's desperation to please him. I looked at the total at the bottom of the spreadsheet. $42,000. Stan Caldwell had siphoned $42,000 of my money through my son to pay for his home repairs, his car maintenance, and his dinners. "And the taxes?" I asked. Vance laughed, a short, sharp bark. "Stan hasn't paid federal income tax since 2018. He has been claiming losses on shell companies that don't exist. He is currently under audit, though he has managed to stall them. But here is the kicker. He listed the lake house, your lake house, as an asset on a loan application he submitted last week. He tried to use a property he doesn't own as collateral for a business loan." "Fraud," I whispered. "Bank fraud, tax evasion, and theft by deception," Vance agreed. "If you hand this file to the IRS and the district attorney, Stan Caldwell is going to prison for a very long time." I closed the file. It was a weapon of mass destruction. Stan thought he was playing chess with a senile old man. He didn't realize I had just captured his king. "Keep it safe," I said. "I want to present it to him personally." Vance nodded. He pushed the second envelope across the table. The thin one. The one with the red confidential stamp from a genetic testing laboratory. "Now for the bride," Vance said. I stared at the envelope. This was it. This was the point of no return. "How did you get it?" I asked. "It wasn't hard," Vance said, taking a sip of his water. "They are living in Stan's house. I have a contact in the sanitation department. We pulled the trash bags from the curb this morning before the truck came." He pulled a photo from his pocket and slid it over. It showed a clear plastic cup from a smoothie chain stained with pink lipstick. "Brittany loves her strawberry smoothies," Vance said. "We found 3 of them in the trash. We swabbed the rim. We ran it against the sample you provided from Justin's hairbrush that you gave me yesterday." I picked up the envelope. My hands were steady, but my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "If that baby is Justin's," I said mostly to myself, "then I have a duty. I have a responsibility to my blood. I cannot leave a grandchild to be raised by wolves." "Open it," Vance said. I tore the seal. I pulled out the single sheet of paper. I skipped the technical jargon, the loci markers, the probability ratios. I looked at the bottom of the page at the summary conclusion. Probability of paternity 0.00%. I read it again. 0.00%. The world seemed to stop spinning for a second. The noise of the diner faded into a dull hum. I looked up at Vance. "It's not his," I said. The words tasted like ash. Vance nodded solemnly. "I didn't think it was." I did a little digging into Brittany's timeline. You remember the golf pro Trent, the one she dated before Justin? Yeah? He is still in the picture. I found Venmo transactions between them. Consulting fees. They stopped 3 months ago, right around the time she would have conceived. I looked back at the paper. A stranger. She was carrying a stranger's child. And she was using that child to extort my son, to extort me, to secure a future she hadn't earned. She had stood on that live stream weeping real tears, rubbing her belly, telling 50,000 people that I was a monster for abandoning my grandchild. But there was no grandchild. There was only a lie. I felt a strange emotion wash over me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't relief. It was clarity. Absolute, crystalline clarity. "Justin doesn't know," I said. No, Vance said. "He thinks he is a father. That is why he is sticking by her. That is why he is putting up with the humiliation. He thinks he is protecting his family. He is protecting a parasite," I said, folding the paper and sliding it into my jacket pocket. I stood up. I pulled a roll of cash from my pocket and dropped $500 on the table. "Thank you, Vance. You have done excellent work." "What are you going to do?" Gordon Vance asked, looking up at me. "I am going to host a dinner party," I said. "A dinner party, yes. I am going to invite them all. Stan, Linda, Brittany, Justin. I am going to tell them I surrender. I am going to tell them I want to make peace." Vance smiled. It was a wolfish grin. "You are going to slaughter them." "I am going to set them free," I corrected him. "I am going to set them free from the burden of their own lies." I walked out of the diner and into the night air. The city was asleep, but I was wide awake. I got into my truck and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. My son was a fool. He was weak. He was entitled. But he was not a father. And that meant he was not trapped. He had let them use him. He had let Stan spend his money. He had let Brittany pin another man's child on him. He was the perfect victim, the useful idiot in their grand scheme to access the Blackwood fortune. I started the engine. The rumble of the V8 was comforting. They wanted a settlement. They wanted half my assets. They wanted the house. They wanted the bonds. I would give them something much more valuable. I would give them the truth. And I would deliver it on a silver platter right before I burned their world to the ground. I pulled out my phone and composed a text message to Justin. "I saw the video. I saw Brittany is pregnant. This changes things. I cannot let my grandchild grow up in a basement. Tell Stan and Linda I want to meet. Tomorrow night. The private room at Le Monet. I am ready to sign over the assets. Let's end this." I hit send. The trap was set. The bait was in the water. Now all I had to do was wait for the sharks to bite. And Stan Caldwell, he was always hungry. The message I sent to Justin was simple, contrite, and perfectly designed to appeal to their greed. "I saw the video. The thought of a grandchild changes everything. I cannot let a Blackwood grow up in a basement. Meet me at Le Monet tomorrow at 7. Private dining room. Bring Stan and Linda. I am ready to sign over the assets and make peace." It was the white flag they had been waiting for. It was the surrender. Le Monet was one of those Chicago institutions where the waiters wore tuxedos and the menu didn't list prices. It was quiet, discreet, and expensive, exactly the kind of place Stan Caldwell loved because it made him feel important. I had reserved the library room, a private space with dark wood paneling, a fireplace, and a heavy oak door that could be closed to shut out the rest of the world. I arrived at 6:30. I was wearing my best suit, a charcoal gray bespoke piece I hadn't worn since I sold my company. I looked like the tycoon I was, not the retiree I pretended to be. I sat at the head of the long table, my back to the fireplace. In front of me, I placed a single leather folder. Inside were the documents Vance had given me, the forensic accounting of Stan's fraud, the DNA test results, and the transfer papers for the trust fund. At 6:55, the heavy door opened. Stan Caldwell walked in first. He was beaming. He wore a suit that was a little too shiny, a little too tight, and he walked with the swagger of a man who thinks he has just won the lottery. Linda followed him, her jewelry clinking, her eyes scanning the room as if appraising the furniture. Then came Justin and Brittany. They looked different from the last time I saw them in the rain. They were clean, dressed up, but there was a tension in their shoulders. Justin wouldn't meet my eyes. He looked at the floor, at the table, anywhere but at his father. Brittany, however, stared right at me. Her chin was high, defiant. She rested a hand protectively on her stomach, a gesture that was both a shield and a weapon. Gordon Stan boomed, extending a hand as he approached the table. "Good to see you, old man. I knew you would come to your senses. Family is family, right?" I did not stand up. I did not shake his hand. I simply gestured to the chairs. "Sit down, Stan." He faltered for a second, his smile slipping, but he recovered quickly. He pulled out a chair for Linda, then sat down to my right. Justin and Brittany sat opposite them. "We are so glad you reached out, Dad." Justin said, his voice quiet. "We didn't want to fight. We were hurt." I know I said, my voice neutral. I was harsh. The wedding, emotions were high. But when I saw the video, when I heard about the baby, I let the sentence hang. Brittany seized on it immediately. "It is a boy," she lied smoothly. "We are going to name him Gordon, after you." I felt a flash of genuine admiration for her audacity. Naming a non-existent heir after the man she was trying to rob. It was bold. "That is touching," I said. Stan leaned forward, his elbows on the table. "So, Gordon, let's get down to business. We brought our lawyer's draft of the agreement. It is pretty standard. Transfer of the real estate portfolio into a family trust managed by myself and Justin. A monthly stipend for you, of course, to cover your living expenses. And immediate access to the liquid cash accounts to settle the outstanding debts." He pushed a thick document across the table toward me. I didn't look at it. "You want control of the trust?" I asked. "It makes the most sense," Stan said, shrugging. "You are retired. You should be relaxing, playing golf. Justin and I have the energy to manage the assets. We can grow the portfolio." "Grow it like you grew your construction business?" I asked. "The one that is currently under audit by the IRS." Stan's face twitched. "That is a misunderstanding. A clerical error. My accountants are handling it. And the loan you applied for, using my lake house as collateral." I continued, my voice still calm. "Was that a clerical error too?" The room went silent. Stan froze. Linda looked at her husband, confusion clouding her eyes. Justin looked up, startled. "What loan?" Justin asked. Stan laughed nervously. "Gordon, I don't know where you are getting your information, but you are misinformed. I opened my leather folder. I pulled out the loan application Vance had found. I slid it across the table to Stan. "Page 3, I said. "Collateral listed 450 Lakeview Drive. That is my house, Stan. You listed a property you do not own to secure a $200,000 loan. That is bank fraud." Stan stared at the paper. His face turned a mottled red. This is a draft," he stammered. "I never submitted this." "You did," I said, "and it was rejected." "But the attempt is still a felony." Linda grabbed Stan's arm. "Stan, what is he talking about? You said the business was booming. You said we were liquid." "He lied to you, Linda," I said, turning my gaze to her. "He is broke. He hasn't paid taxes in 5 years. He has been using Justin's credit card, my credit card, to pay for your lifestyle. I pulled out the credit card statements. I slid them to Justin. Look at the dates, Justin. Look at the charges. Home Depot, car repairs, steak dinners. Were you at the Golden Steer on April 2nd? Justin picked up the statement. His hands were shaking. No, I was at home. I was working on the pitch deck. Stan told you he needed the card for the wedding, didn't he? I asked. Justin looked at Stan. His eyes were wide with betrayal. Stan, you said you were buying lumber for the arch. You spent $800 at a steakhouse. Stan stood up, slamming his hand on the table. This is an ambush. We came here to make peace, and you are attacking me with fabricated nonsense. Come on, Linda, we are leaving. Sit down, Stan, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it had the weight of a judge's gavel. Unless you want me to call the detective waiting in the lobby. Stan froze. Detective Fraud Division. I sent them the file this morning. They are very interested in your creative accounting, but I asked them to wait. I told them I wanted to give you a chance to explain yourself to your family first. Stan sank back into his chair. He looked deflated, a balloon that had lost its air. Linda was staring at him with horror. You spent my inheritance, she whispered. My mother's money, you said you invested it. I invested it in keeping us afloat, Stan yelled back. Do you have any idea what it costs to maintain that house, to buy your jewelry, to keep up appearances? I did it for us. While they argued, I turned my attention to the other side of the table, to Brittany. She was watching her parents with a look of pure panic. She knew her safety net was unraveling. She knew her father couldn't save her. And you, Brittany, I said softly. She snapped her head toward me. Her eyes were fearful, like a trapped animal. What about me? She asked defensively. I didn't steal anything. I just want what is best for my baby. Ah, yes. The baby. Little Gordon. I pulled the DNA test envelope from the folder. I held it in my hand, tapping it gently against the table. I have a question, Brittany. A simple one. Is Justin the father? She didn't hesitate. Of course he is. How dare you? I am your son's wife. I looked at Justin. He was watching her, his face a mask of confusion. Justin, I said. Did you know Brittany was still seeing Trent 3 months ago, Trent? Justin frowned. The golf pro, no. They broke up years ago. I pulled out the Venmo transaction log. Consulting fees, I read. Late-night transfers. And then... silence. Right around the time of conception. Brittany stood up. That is private. You have no right to snoop in my finances, and I have every right when you are asking for half my fortune to raise a child. You claim is my grandson, I said. I opened the envelope. I pulled out the DNA test result. I slid it to Justin. Read it, son. Justin looked at the paper. He read the words. Probability of paternity 0.00%. He read it again. He looked at Brittany. It's not mine, he whispered. The baby. It isn't mine. Brittany burst into tears. It was a mistake. We were on a break. You were so busy with the business. I felt lonely. Trent was there. It just happened. But I love you, Justin. I chose you. You chose his money, I shouted, slamming my hand on the table. The sound echoed in the small room, silencing them all. You chose him because he was the safe bet. You chose him because you thought he was rich. You pinned another man's child on him to secure a payout. Justin stood up. He was shaking. He looked at Brittany, really looked at her for the first time in months. He saw the tears, the desperation, the lies. You let me fight my dad, he said, his voice trembling. You let me humiliate myself. You let me beg for money, for a baby that isn't even mine. Justin, please. Brittany sobbed, reaching for him. We can fix this. We can still be a family. Don't touch me, Justin screamed, recoiling. He turned to me. Dad, I didn't know, I swear. I know you didn't, I said, my voice softening. You are a fool, Justin, but you aren't a monster. You were just the mark. I looked around the table. Stan was pale, defeated. Linda was weeping silently. Brittany was hysterical. Justin was broken. The trap had sprung. The truth was out. And the silence that followed was the sound of their world ending. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. There will be no transfer of assets, I said. There will be no trust fund. There will be no stipend. I looked at Stan. The police are in the lobby, Stan. I suggest you go quietly. It will be less embarrassing for Linda. I looked at Brittany. The paternity test is legal proof of fraud if you try to claim child support from Justin. I suggest you call Trent. Maybe he has a nursery. And finally, I looked at Justin. You have a choice, son. You can stay here with them, with the liars and the thieves. Or you can walk out that door with me. But if you walk out with me, you leave with nothing but the clothes on your back. No car, no money, no wife, just you, and you start over. From scratch. Like a man. I walked to the door. I opened it. I didn't look back. I walked down the hallway toward the lobby. I heard a chair scrape against the floor behind me. Then footsteps. Fast, heavy footsteps. I walked out into the cool night air. The valet was bringing my truck around. Dad, I turned. Justin was standing on the sidewalk. He was alone. He had left them. He looked terrified. He looked lost. But he was there. I nodded. Get in the truck, I said. We have work to do. The heavy oak door of the private dining room clicked shut, sealing us in a bubble of expensive silence. The air smelled of beeswax polish, and the vintage Cabernet Stan had ordered the moment he sat down a bottle that cost $600, which he assumed I would be paying for. I sat at the head of the mahogany table, my hands resting on the leather folder that contained their destruction. But they did not know that yet. To them, I was a defeated man. To them, I was a lonely, aging father desperate to buy his way back into his family's good graces. Stan Caldwell wasted no time. He reached into his briefcase, a flashy alligator skin number that looked tacky against the refined decor of the room, and pulled out a thick stack of documents bound in blue legal covers. He slid them across the polished wood toward me with the confidence of a card shark laying down a royal flush. Gordon, let's not beat around the bush, Stan said, his voice booming with false conviviality. We are all adults here. We all want what is best for the children, and of course for the grandchild. He paused to take a sip of wine, swishing it around his mouth before swallowing. My lawyers drew this up this morning, he continued. It is a comprehensive asset restructuring plan. Given the instability you have shown recently, we believe it is in everyone's best interest to secure the family legacy now rather than waiting for probate court. I looked at the document. The title page read, Irrevocable Transfer of Assets and Establishment of the Blackwood Caldwell Family Trust. I flipped the cover open. My eyes scanned the legalese. It was not a restructuring plan. It was a robbery. A violent ink and paper mugging. Clause 1 dictated the immediate transfer of 50% of my liquid cash holdings into a joint account managed by Stan and Justin. Clause 2 required the deed to the lake house and my commercial properties to be placed in the trust, with Stan listed as the primary executor. Clause 3 was the insult that truly stung, a monthly stipend of $4,000 to be paid to me for living expenses subject to review by the trustees. They wanted to put me on an allowance. My own money, my own empire, and they wanted to dole it out to me like I was a teenager. I looked up from the papers. Stan was watching me, a smug grin plastered on his face. Linda was pretending to admire the crown molding, but her eyes kept darting to the pen sitting next to my hand. Justin was staring at his water glass, his leg bouncing nervously under the table. And Brittany was putting on a performance worthy of an Academy Award. She sat with one hand resting protectively on her stomach, her head tilted to the side, her expression a mix of vulnerability and expectation. "It is a lot of legal jargon, Gordon, I know," Stan said, waving a hand dismissively. "But the bottom line is simple. You sign over control of the bulk of the estate now. We manage the investments. We ensure the capital grows. And in return, you get to be part of the family again. You get to be a grandfather." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper that was meant to sound intimate, but sounded only predatory. "If you don't sign, Gordon, well, we have to proceed with the competency hearing. We have the affidavits ready. We have witnesses who saw you yelling at the wedding. We have the incident at the real estate office. It will be messy. It will be public. And you will lose anyway. The court will appoint a guardian. Why not let that guardian be family?" I looked at Justin. My son. The boy I had carried on my shoulders. The man who was now sitting across from me, letting his father-in-law threaten to lock me away. "Justin," I said softly, "is this what you want? You want to put me on an allowance? You think I am incompetent?" Justin finally looked up. His eyes were wet, rimmed with red. He looked exhausted. "Dad, it isn't like that," he stammered. "It is just protection. Stan knows business. He can help manage things. And with the baby coming, we just need security. You have so much. You don't even spend it. Why does it matter whose name is on the account if it stays in the family?" "Because it is my name, Justin," I said. "Because I earned it." Brittany let out a soft, wounded sound. She rubbed her belly, drawing every eye in the room to her midsection. "Gordon, please," she said, her voice trembling. "Don't make this about ego. Think about little Gordon. Think about your grandson. Do you want him to grow up worrying about money? Do you want him to struggle?" She looked me in the eye, tears welling up on command. "We are almost out of money, Gordon. The stress. The doctor said the stress is bad for the baby. If something happens to this pregnancy because we are worried about where we are going to sleep, could you live with that? Could you live with knowing your selfishness hurt your grandson? It was a masterstroke of manipulation. Using an innocent life, a life she claimed was my flesh and blood, as a bargaining chip. She was holding a gun to the head of a ghost, threatening a child that didn't exist to extort a man she despised. I looked at the document again. 50%, immediate transfer. That was over $4 million in liquid assets alone, not counting the real estate. They were trying to strip mine my life before I was even in the ground. And if I signed this, I asked, keeping my voice steady, devoid of the rage that was boiling in my gut. If I sign this, the lawsuit goes away, the competency hearing is dropped. Stan nodded eagerly. Immediately. We tear up the petition. We forget the wedding ever happened. You come to Sunday dinner. You get to paint the nursery. We become one big happy family again. One big happy family, I repeated. Expensive. Stan laughed. Quality usually is, Gordon. Quality usually is. He pulled a gold fountain pen from his pocket and uncapped it. He held it out to me. The nib glinted in the chandelier light. Sign it, Gordon. Do the right thing. For Justin. For the baby. I took the pen. It was heavy. Ostentatious. Just like Stan. I held the pen over the signature line. I could feel the tension in the room spike. Stan stopped breathing. Linda leaned forward. Brittany stopped crying. Even Justin looked up, a flicker of hope in his eyes. Hope that his problems were about to be solved by his father's checkbook, just like always. They were so close. They could taste the money. They could see the yachts, the cars, the vacations. They thought they had won. They thought the old man was broken. I lowered the pen to the paper. But I did not write my name. Instead, I tapped the nib against the document, leaving a small black dot of ink. I looked up. I looked at each of them in turn. Stan the fraud, Linda the enabler, Brittany the liar, Justin the coward. I have one question, I said. My voice was quiet, calm, the center of the storm. Stan blinked. A question, sure, Gordon. Anything. I looked directly at Stan, then shifted my gaze to Brittany. Are you sure? I asked. Brittany frowned. Sure of what? Are you sure you want to take this money? I asked. Are you absolutely certain that you want to cross this line? Because once I sign this, once we transact, there is no going back. You are taking half of everything I built. You are taking my life's work. Of course we are sure, Stan scoffed, his patience thinning. Don't be dramatic, Gordon. It is just paper. It is just money. You can't take it with you. I nodded slowly. You are right, Stan. You can't take it with you. But you have to live with how you got it. I looked at Justin. Last chance, son. Are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to take your father's money under threat of legal action? Is this the man you are? Justin swallowed hard. He looked at Brittany. She nudged him under the table. I saw the movement. I have to, Dad, Justin whispered. For the baby. I have to secure his future. For the baby, I repeated. I set the pen down on the table. I did not sign the document. I placed my hands on top of the leather folder I had brought with me. Very well, I said. You have made your position clear. You want the assets. You believe you are entitled to them because of the blood connection, because of the child. Exactly, Stan said, reaching for the pen to hand it back to me. Now sign. No, I said. Stan froze. Excuse me, I am not signing your document, Stan. I am not signing your trust agreement. Stan's face turned a dark shade of purple. Gordon, we warned you. If you walk out of here, my lawyer files the petition tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. We will freeze everything. You won't be able to buy a cup of coffee. We will humiliate you in court. We will paint you as a senile, incompetent old fool. I know, I said. I heard you planning it. Stan paused. What I opened the leather folder. I took out the first item. It was a small black USB drive. I placed it on the table next to the unsigned contract. I heard you, Stan. In your dining room, Tuesday night. I heard you tell Justin to act like a plaintiff. I heard you tell Brittany to frame the wedding as a cry for help. I heard you plotting to switch my medications if the court case didn't work fast enough. Stan went pale. That is illegal. You bugged my house. I hired a professional who operates in the gray areas just like you, Stan. But unlike you, he is good at his job. I reached into the folder again. You wanted to talk about assets. Stan. Let's talk about assets. Let's talk about your assets. Or rather, the lack of them. I pulled out the forensic accounting report Vance had compiled. I slid it across the table, knocking over Stan's glass of expensive wine. The red liquid spilled across the white tablecloth like blood, staining the contract he wanted me to sign. I didn't sign your document, Stan, because I was busy reading this one. Stan looked down at the report. He saw the logo of the IRS fraud division on the top sheet. He saw the list of his shell companies. He saw the dates and amounts of the funds he had embezzled from his own clients. I looked at Brittany. She had stopped rubbing her belly. Her hands were gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles were white. You asked if I was sure. I said to the room, I am very sure. I am sure that you are not getting half my money. I am sure that you are not getting control of my estate. And I am absolutely sure, Brittany, that you are not getting a trust fund for that baby." "Why?" Brittany whispered, her voice trembling with genuine fear now. "Because you hate us." "No," I said, reaching into the folder for the final envelope. "The one with the red seal. Because my dear one does not set up a trust fund for a fiction." I held the DNA envelope in my hand. The room was silent. The only sound was the drip, drip, drip of the spilled wine hitting the floor. "You wanted the truth, Justin," I asked my son. "You wanted to secure the future. Let's look at the future." I ripped the seal open. I placed the torn envelope containing the DNA results face down on the table. The red wax seal was broken, a jagged wound against the white paper. I saw Brittany's eyes dart toward it, her breath catching in her throat. But I was not ready to deliver the final blow just yet. I wanted to dismantle the army before I executed the general. I wanted Justin to see exactly who he had allied himself with. I wanted him to see that his father-in-law was not a titan of industry, but a parasite feeding on his naivety. I stood up and walked to the sideboard where a large flat-screen television was mounted on the mahogany wall intended for corporate presentations. I pulled an HDMI cable from my briefcase and connected it to my laptop. The screen flickered to life, casting a harsh blue glow over the dim mood lighting of the private dining room. "Look at the screen, Justin," I commanded. Justin turned in his chair. He looked like a man waking up from surgery, groggy and disoriented. Stan was staring at the monitor, with the wide-eyed terror of a deer in the headlights of a semi-truck. "What is this?" Stan demanded, his voice cracking. "You cannot just hijack the equipment. This is a private dinner." "It is a business meeting, Stan," I corrected him. "You brought a contract. I brought a presentation." I clicked a key on my laptop. A spreadsheet appeared on the screen. It was complex, filled with rows of numbers and dates, but I had highlighted the relevant sections in bright, accusing yellow. "Justin, do you remember the $50,000 you transferred to Caldwell Capital 3 months ago?" I asked. Justin blinked, squinting at the screen. "Yeah, of course. That was the buy-in for the riverfront condo project. Stan said it was a guaranteed 12% return. It was the last of the money Mom left me." I nodded. I clicked the next slide. "This is the bank statement for Caldwell Capital for the month of April," I said. The screen showed a balance of $50,000 arriving on the 4th of the month. "And this," I said, clicking again, "is the transaction history for the 5th of the month." The screen changed. It showed a single wire transfer, $50,000. But the recipient wasn't a construction firm. It wasn't an architect. It wasn't a supplier. The recipient was listed as Caesars Entertainment, Las Vegas, Nevada. Justin stared at the line. He read it once. He read it twice. "Las Vegas," Justin whispered. "Stan, why did you send my money to a casino?" Stan sputtered, sweat beading on his forehead. That is a holding company. They own the land rights. It is a complex deal, Justin. You wouldn't understand the back-end financing." I clicked again. The next image was a player rewards summary hacked from the casino's database by my investigator. It showed Stan Caldwell's player card activity. It showed $50,000 in chips purchased on April 5th. And it showed a balance of 0 on April 7th. He didn't buy land. "Justin," I said, my voice cutting through the room like a scalpel. "He played baccarat. And he lost. He lost every single penny of your inheritance in 48 hours. Justin turned slowly to face his father-in-law. The look on his face wasn't anger yet. It was a shattering heartbreak. He had looked up to this man. He had wanted to be him. "You gambled it." Justin asked, his voice trembling. "You told me we were partners. You told me that money was safe." "It was a bridge loan," Stan shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "I was going to pay it back. I just had a run of bad luck. I have a system. I was going to double your investment, Justin. I was doing it for you. You stole from him, I stated. And that is just the beginning. I clicked the remote again. A new document appeared. This one bore the seal of the United States Department of the Treasury. Stan Caldwell has not filed a legitimate tax return in 5 years, I explained to the room. He claims poverty to the IRS while flashing gold watches at the country club. But here is the problem, Linda. I looked at Brittany's mother. She was pressing a napkin to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. He didn't just hide his own money, I said. He used your social security number to open 3 shell companies that are currently listed as delinquent on $2 million in unpaid payroll taxes. Linda let out a strangled gasp. You used my name, Stan. You told me those papers were for the estate planning. I needed a signatory, Stan yelled, his face turning a deep, violent shade of purple. I was protecting our assets. If the feds came after me, I needed the house to be safe. The house isn't safe, Stan, I said. I clicked the final slide. It was a notice of lien. Because you haven't paid the mortgage in 8 months, the bank initiated foreclosure proceedings yesterday. You are not just broke. You are homeless. The silence that descended on the room was absolute. It was the silence of a bomb crater. Stan Caldwell, the big man, the developer, the patriarch, seemed to shrink in his chair. He slumped forward, burying his face in his hands. Justin stood up. He walked over to Stan. I thought he was going to hit him. I hoped briefly that he would. Instead, he just looked down at the man who had promised him the world. You are a fraud, Justin whispered. You are nothing but a cheap con artist. And I gave you everything. I gave you my dad's credit card. I gave you my inheritance. I let you talk me into fighting my own father. Justin, listen to me, Stan pleaded, reaching out a hand. We can fix this. Gordon has the money. If he signs the trust, we can pay off the mortgage. We can pay back the taxes. We just need a bridge. He looked at me. His eyes were desperate, wild. Gordon, please. For the family. Don't let Linda lose her house. Don't let me go to jail. Just sign the check. You have so much. What is a few million to you? I looked at him with zero sympathy. It is everything, Stan. Because I earned it. And you are going to jail, not because I am cruel, but because you are a thief. I pulled the HDMI cable out of the laptop. The screen went black, plunging the room back into the shadows. That is the financial reality, Justin, I said. Your partner is a criminal. Your investment is gone. Your in-laws are destitute. I sat back down at the head of the table. I placed my hand on the DNA envelope again. Justin looked at me. He looked stripped bare. His arrogance was gone. His entitlement was gone. He looked like a boy who had fallen off his bike and realized he was bleeding. Dad, he said, his voice choking. I am sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I know, son, I said. But ignorance is expensive. I picked up the envelope. But money comes and goes, Justin. Money is just paper. We can recover from bankruptcy. We can recover from theft. I looked at Brittany. She was sitting perfectly still like a statue carved from ice. She knew what was coming. She knew there was nowhere left to run. The betrayal of blood, however, I said. That is harder to fix. I turned the envelope over in my hands. We have established that Stan is a liar, I said. We have established that he stole your past. Now let's talk about your wife. And let's talk about how she tried to steal your future. Brittany closed her eyes. A single tear escaped rolling down her perfectly made-up cheek. It was the first genuine thing she had done all night. Open your eyes, Brittany, I said softly. She opened them. Tell him, I said. Tell him before I read it. She didn't speak. She couldn't. Fine, I said. I pulled the folded paper out of the torn envelope. Justin, I said, read this. The sheet of paper trembled in Justin's hands as he held it under the dim light of the chandelier. His eyes moved across the lines of text, but his brain seemed unwilling to process the information. It was as if he was reading a foreign language, the syntax of a betrayal too profound to comprehend. He looked up at me, his face pale and slack. Dad, what does this mean? He whispered. Probability of paternity. 0%. It means Justin, I said, my voice low and steady, that the child Brittany is carrying does not share your DNA. It means you are not the father. Justin turned slowly toward his wife. Brittany was staring at the tablecloth, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge of the table. She looked small-cornered and utterly guilty. Britt. Justin asked, his voice cracking. Tell me this is a mistake. Tell me the lab messed up. Brittany didn't answer. She just closed her eyes, a single tear escaping down her cheek. Tell him, Justin shouted, slamming his hand on the table. The sound echoed in the small room, making everyone jump except me. Tell him the truth. She looked up, then her eyes flashing with a desperate defiance. It was a mistake, she stammered. We were on a break. You were so busy with the business. I felt lonely. A break, Justin laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. We were planning our wedding. We were picking out flowers. You were sleeping with someone else while I was picking out centerpieces. It just happened, she cried. It didn't mean anything. I love you, Justin. I chose you. You chose his money, I interjected, leaning forward. You chose the safety net. You chose the Blackwood name because you knew it came with a trust fund. Brittany glared at me. You don't know anything about love, you bitter old man. I know enough to know that love doesn't involve paternity fraud, I said. I reached into my folder again. I wasn't done. The DNA test was the bullet, but I had the smoking gun to go with it. You said it just happened, Brittany, I asked. You said it was a mistake. A moment of weakness. I pulled out a sleek black tablet and placed it on the table. I tapped the screen. A video file began to play. It was grainy black and white security footage, time-stamped 3 months ago. The camera angle was from a hotel lobby. The timestamp showed 11:42 p.m. The doors opened and a couple walked in. They were laughing, leaning into each other. The woman was Brittany. She was wearing a cocktail dress. I recognized Justin had bought it for her birthday. The man was not Justin. He was tall, athletic, with the tan of someone who spent his days on a fairway. Trent, Justin whispered, recognizing the man instantly. Your ex. The golf pro. The video continued. Brittany and Trent walked to the elevator. He kissed her neck. She laughed and pulled him closer. They got into the elevator together. The doors closed. I paused the video. That wasn't a moment of weakness, Brittany, I said. That was a date. And if you look at the timestamp, that was 2 weeks before you told Justin you were pregnant. Justin stared at the frozen image on the screen. He looked at his wife, the woman he had defended against his own father, the woman he had gone into debt for, the woman he had been ready to fight the world for. You lied to me, he said, his voice barely audible. Every day. You let me rub your belly. You let me talk to the baby. You let me pick out names. And you knew. You knew the whole time it wasn't mine. I was scared. Brittany sobbed. I didn't want to lose you. You didn't want to lose the lifestyle, Justin yelled. You didn't want to go back to working retail. You wanted the lake house. You wanted the status. He turned to me. His eyes were wild with pain. Dad, I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't know. I know, son, I said gently. You were the mark. You were the useful idiot. Stan needed a rich son-in-law to cover his debts. Brittany needed a rich husband to cover her mistakes. They found you. And they used you. Stan Caldwell cleared his throat. He looked like a man who was trying to salvage a ship that had already sunk. Now hold on, Gordon, Stan said, trying to muster some authority. These are personal matters. Marriages have rough patches. This doesn't change the business deal. We still need to secure the assets for the family. I looked at Stan with pure disgust. There is no family. Stan, I said. The family is a lie. The business is a fraud. And the assets are staying right where they are. I looked at Justin. Justin, listen to me closely. I have a lot of money. You know that now. I could buy this hotel. I could buy your in-laws' house 10 times over. And I would spend every single penny of it to help my grandchild. I would build schools. I would set up trusts. I would make sure that child never wanted for anything. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. But I will not spend a single dime to raise the child of a golf instructor who is too cowardly to claim his own offspring. I will not finance a lie, and I will not let you be the cuckold who pays for it. Justin looked at me. He nodded slowly. The tears were gone now, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. He looked at Brittany. She reached for his hand, but he pulled it away as if she were burning him. We are done, Justin said. Brittany gasped. Justin. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. We are done, he repeated, his voice stronger. I want a divorce, and I want you out of my life, tonight. But where will I go? She wailed. My parents are losing their house. We have no money. That sounds like a you problem, Justin said, echoing the words I had said to him just days ago. He stood up. He looked at Stan. And you, Stan, you stole my inheritance. You stole my future. I should punch you in the face, but you aren't worth the effort. Justin turned to me. Dad, can we go? Please, I can't be in this room anymore. The smell of them, it makes me sick. I stood up. I closed the leather folder. I picked up the tablet. Yes, son, I said. We can go. I looked at Stan one last time. He was slumped in his chair, a broken man. Linda was weeping into her napkin. Brittany was staring at the wall, her face a mask of shock. The police are in the lobby, Stan, I said. They have a warrant for your arrest. Tax fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. I suggest you finish your wine. It will be the last good glass you have for a long time. I walked to the door. Justin followed me. He didn't look back. He walked tall, his shoulders squared. He looked like a Blackwood. We walked out of the private dining room and into the main restaurant. The noise of the other diners, the clinking of glasses, the laughter. It all seemed distant, irrelevant. We walked through the lobby. I saw 2 detectives in suits standing near the entrance. They nodded at me. I nodded back. They moved toward the private dining room. We walked out into the cool night air. The valet brought my truck around. Justin looked at the truck. It was old. It was dented. It was honest. Can I drive? He asked. I tossed him the keys. Sure, I said. But don't scratch it. It is worth more than your father-in-law's entire company. Justin laughed. It was a weak, watery sound, but it was real. He climbed into the driver's seat. I got in the passenger side. Where to, Dad? He asked. Let's go home, son, I said. Real home. Not the lake house, not the apartment. My house. We have a guest room. It needs painting, but it is dry, and it is paid for. Justin put the truck in gear. He pulled out onto the street. He didn't look back at the hotel. He didn't look back at the life he thought he wanted. He just drove. And for the first time in 5 years, I felt like I had my son back. Not the entrepreneur, not the husband, just my son. And that was worth every penny. The lobby of Le Monet was a cavern of marble and echoing whispers usually reserved for the hush of high society, but tonight it was the stage for a much grittier performance. As we stepped out of the hallway, the two detectives I had seen earlier moved with the synchronized precision of predators who had finally cornered their prey. They did not run. They simply intercepted Stan Caldwell before he could reach the revolving doors. Mr. Caldwell, the taller detective, said, blocking Stan's path with a badge held high. "We have a warrant for your arrest." Stan tried to sidestep, his face slick with sweat. "There is a mistake. I am having dinner with my family. I am a respected developer. You are a suspect in a multi-million-dollar embezzlement scheme, sir." The detective corrected him, pulling a pair of steel handcuffs from his belt. "Please turn around and place your hands behind your back." Linda let out a shriek that cut through the ambient noise of the restaurant. "Stan, do something. Tell them who you are. I am trying." "Linda," Stan shouted, struggling as the cold metal clicked around his wrists. Gordon, tell them we are resolving this." I stopped and looked at the man who had treated my son like a walking credit card. I looked at the man who had looked me in the eye and lied about my own assets. "I told them, Stan," I said calmly. "I am the one who gave them the file." The color drained from Stan's face as the officers marched him toward the exit. Linda scrambled after them, her heels clacking frantically on the marble, sobbing about bail money she didn't have. Brittany stood alone near the coat check. She looked at her parents being hauled away, then she looked at Justin. Her face twisted into a mask of pure, venomous hatred. She didn't look scared anymore. She looked like a cornered rat ready to bite. "This is your fault," she hissed at Justin, stepping into his personal space. "You weak, pathetic little boy. You couldn't even protect your own family. If you had just been a man, if you had just secured the trust fund, none of this would have happened." Justin stared at her. He looked at the woman he had worshipped. He looked at the stomach that held another man's child. "My fault," Justin whispered. "You lied to me. You cheated on me. You tried to steal from my father. And you let me," she screamed, shoving him in the chest. "You let me because you are desperate. You knew I was out of your league. You were happy to buy me because you knew you couldn't earn me. You are just like your father, a sad, lonely man with a wallet where his heart should be." She raised her hand to strike him just as she had done in the rain at the lake house. But this time Justin caught her wrist. He held it there for a second, the air between them crackling with the energy of 1,000 swallowed insults. "Don't you ever touch me again," Justin said, his voice low and dangerous. Brittany laughed a cruel, mocking sound. "Or what? What are you going to do?" "Justin, run to Daddy." Justin didn't run. He didn't speak. He simply swung his open hand and struck her across the face. It wasn't a light tap. It was a crack that echoed off the marble walls, a release of 5 years of humiliation. Brittany stumbled back, clutching her cheek, her eyes wide with shock. She had pushed him and pushed him, never believing the worm would turn. It was ugly. It was violent. And it was too late. I watched without moving. I did not condone it, but I understood it. It was the sound of an illusion shattering. Brittany stared at him for 1 second longer, then turned and ran out the door, chasing the fading sirens of the police cars that held her future. Justin stood there, his hand stinging his chest, heaving. He looked at the empty door. Then he turned to me. He crumbled. He dropped to his knees right there on the lobby floor, oblivious to the diners staring at us. He grabbed the hem of my jacket. "Dad," he sobbed, his voice broken and small. "Dad, I am so sorry. I messed up. I messed everything up. Please, please just help me. I don't know what to do. I have nowhere to go. I have no money. I have nothing. Just tell me what to do. Fix it. Please fix it." I looked down at my son. I saw the terror in his eyes. I saw the boy who used to scrape his knee and wait for me to bring the bandages. Every instinct in my body, every biological imperative of fatherhood screamed at me to pull him up, to hug him, to tell him I would write a check, hire a lawyer, buy him a new apartment, and make the bad world go away. But I knew that if I did that, I would kill him. I would kill the man he needed to become. I reached down and gently removed his hands from my jacket. I stepped back. "No, Justin," I said. He looked up, confused, tears streaming down his face. "What? I am not going to fix it," I said. "I am not going to pay for a hotel. I am not going to give you cash. I am not going to tell you what to do, but Dad, I am your son. That is why I am doing this," I said. "You have a guest room at my house. You have a bed. You have food in the fridge. That is what a father provides. But the rest, the debt, the divorce, the job, the life, that is yours to fix." I turned and walked toward the exit. "Come home when you are ready to work," I said over my shoulder. "Or don't. It is your choice." I walked out into the night, leaving him kneeling on the floor. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. It hurt more than the funeral. It hurt more than the betrayal. But as I walked to my truck, I felt a strange sense of peace. I had finally stopped enabling his destruction. I had finally acted like a father. 3 months later, the sign on the front lawn of my estate said, "Sold." I sat in the cab of my new vehicle, looking at the house one last time. It was a beautiful house. It held memories of Mary, of Justin growing up, of parties and holidays. But it was also a mausoleum. It was a monument to a life that was over. I had liquidated everything. The commercial properties were sold to a real estate conglomerate. The municipal bonds were cashed out. The liquid assets were consolidated. I had kept $2 million for myself, enough to live comfortably, enough to handle emergencies. The rest, nearly $12 million, I had donated. I established the Mary Blackwood Vocational Scholarship. It would pay for trade school for kids who wanted to build things, kids who wanted to work with their hands, kids who didn't have a safety net. It was the legacy Mary would have wanted. I looked at the vehicle I was sitting in. It was a 45-foot Prevost motor coach, a rolling luxury apartment with marble floors and satellite internet. It was my new home. I had no itinerary. I had no schedule. I had the open road. My phone buzzed on the dashboard. I looked at the screen. Justin calling. He was living in my old guest room. He was working construction, an entry-level job I had helped him get with an old colleague. He was waking up at 5 a.m. He was sweating. He was paying me rent. It was a small amount, but he paid it every week. He was miserable, he was tired, but he was sober and he was real. I picked up the phone. I looked at his name. I didn't answer. I had already said everything I needed to say to him before I left the house this morning. I had told him the house was his to live in as long as he paid the taxes and the utilities. I had told him I was proud of him for swinging a hammer instead of a golf club. I didn't need to say goodbye. Goodbyes are for people who are looking back. I rolled down the window. The autumn air was crisp and smelled of burning leaves. I took the phone in my hand. It was a smartphone full of apps, contacts, emails, obligations, and the ghosts of the last 6 months. I tossed it out the window. It landed in the grass with a soft thud. I put the massive diesel engine into gear. The air brakes hissed a sound like a dragon waking up. I pulled out of the driveway, the tires crunching on the gravel for the last time. I turned onto the main road and pointed the nose of the RV west. The road ahead was gray and endless. The rearview mirror was empty. I was Gordon Blackwood. I was broke by the standards of my old life. I was homeless by the standards of the census. But as I watched the speedometer climb and felt the vibration of the road beneath me, I knew the truth. I was free. I spent years confusing providing with parenting. I thought writing checks was an act of love, but I was only funding their entitlement and crippling my son's ability to become a man. The hardest truth I had to accept was that sometimes you have to let your children fall so they can finally learn how to stand. True wealth isn't the balance in your bank account. It is the peace of mind that comes from living with integrity. If you are holding on to toxic people simply because they share your DNA, let go. Your dignity is worth far more than their approval. You are never too old to reclaim your life and find your own freedom. If you agree that respect must be earned and cannot be bought, hit that like button and tell me in the comments. Would you have forgiven Justin, or did he deserve to be cut off? Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice.